Welcome to Ulua, You Live, You Work, You Art. Your guest today, Ranco K.
Hi, this is Caro from Ulua, and I'm editing now. I have ended editing the conversation I had with Ranco K because his name is kind of difficult to pronounce for me. And we talked about the story of Ranco. He was born in Colombia and then he moved to the Netherlands. He went to Indonesia where I met him, and I thought his story was really interesting. So he tells us about this in this chat, and also we talked about the cultural differences from Latin America, Europe, and Indonesia too, and how this has prepared him for his new stay in Colombia. And he's also a professor at university, a professor of leadership, management, sustainability, and so he's also talking about that, how he sees from his perspective, how he sees the future of his students and how he's contributing for them to change their mindset, maybe enrich their culture. So I think it's really interesting, and I leave you to it. Let's go. Hello, everyone. It's Carol from Ulua, and I am here with Ranco. And I've known Ranco from, I don't know, like before the pandemics, from 2019, right?
I
It
think
was a
so, yeah.
long time ago when I was in Indonesia, and we had some conversations. Not much, actually, there. I think
No,
we
I
have,
remember that we had a beer with Antonio.
yes, and
And
I think we have more conversations after I came back
yeah,
to from Indonesia than being there. Yes, we work for Equipa, which was our consultancy, the consultancy agency. We were together and we met there. And well, tell us who is Ranco?
yeah. So my name is Ranco. I'm born in Colombia, in Ibagué. I'm adopted by two lovely parents in the Netherlands. So I was 14 months when I walked out the country. No, I think, yeah, 14 months you can walk, right? I have two sisters. They also adopted from Indonesia. I married an Indonesian woman that I met in the Netherlands. We met, and at a certain point, she proposed me and said, "Hey, what if we go to? What if I join you to Indonesia, to Colombia, and would you like to join me to Indonesia?" I said, "Let's. That's a good deal. Let's get married." So that's how we met. And in 2013, we moved to Indonesia with our two little girls, and we stay, I think, too long in our comfort zone, both working in the corporate. Um, my wife said, "Yeah, I like to get some work experience in the Netherlands." And so we started a family. We had a house and nice jobs, but every year we were wondering when we are doing what we promised to each other to do something more than only making money for companies.
Mhm.
So, because my wife, when we met, it's really funny. She said, "Oh, I'm not looking for a husband. I just want to finish my master here in the Netherlands and then go back to Indonesia." Because back then in 2000, I think there were not many people that had the opportunity to do a master in Europe. And she got the opportunity, and she said, "I want to go back and share the knowledge." And when we met, I just came back from my first trip to Colombia. And I was really touched by the friendliness and the warmth, and of course, also the big gap between rich and poor. So I thought, and I shared with my family and said, maybe I should quit my job and do something good with my life, because there are so many people in Colombia that doesn't have a good education or opportunities for a good life.
Mm.
And of course, I saw we visited Indonesia when I was 16 with my parents and my two sisters to see where they were born, and we traveled as a family. So I've seen poverty, but I think because I'm born here, it was a little bit more emotional. So I thought, okay, maybe I should do something more than only making money. And my dad said something really good. He said, maybe you should get some work experience first before you move to another country and try to help them, because if you have no experience, yeah, there's not a lot to give. So that's what we did. So we hang in 8 years. I met my wife. We got two little girls. They are now 16 and 14, so they are a little bit bigger. But they spent 3, 4 years in the Netherlands, and then we moved to Indonesia. And that was really a culture shock. I thought it was easy because I love Indonesia. We went every year almost to visit my family in law, but it was really a culture shock to realize that being on holiday versus living there is a different game.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. So the first 3, 4 years were really transformational, learning how to handle chaos and how to handle the different environment, different culture, where I didn't speak the language, and I think at the beginning everything that we planned to do didn't work out as planned, so that's maybe something good. Um, so I think that was really refreshing and prepared me for the trip to Colombia. I think that was really
Yeah.
helpful to prepare myself for living in a less structured land where time is more elastic. It's like, okay, you have an appointment with someone at 1 and they easily come at 3 or cancel the whole thing last minute. So that's something from you live in Europe for a long time, it's really a culture shock.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, even for me that I live here in Argentina, that we are not maybe like in Colombia, we have certain gaps in time, but not that much. But it was a shock for me too. Yes, I can understand that. So you were preparing for Colombia, for your coming back
Yeah,
to Colombia.
looking back in retrospective, I think Indonesia really prepared me well
Hmm.
for how to interact with people because I think in the Netherlands it's really transactional. Most of the
Yeah.
relationships that you have in business, it's time bound. It's okay. We have 30 minutes set for a meeting and no longer.
Mm.
Here in Colombia, but also in Indonesia, a meeting that's planned for 30 minutes can easily last 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so that's something that my father, I still remember, my father came to one of my trainings in Indonesia at the beginning. So, and he said, Ranco, the people are late. Yeah, I said, yeah, that's normal. Oh, and people are talking while other people are presenting. Yeah, that's the culture. That's accepted by them as a norm. And
Mhm.
that was quite interesting when my father made these points, and I was like, oh yeah, we just accept that they come late, that they are not really completely silent when other are presenting, for example. Even professionals, they just talk to each other while other presenting. I was like, oh, that's really rude. But in their culture, it's okay.
Mhm.
But that was really a nice, yeah, an interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah, it was really interesting. And I remember you told me your story one of the times we met, and I really connected with your story and I really liked it. And I said, I hope I can find you again in Latin America maybe sometime. We haven't been together in person yet, but it's nice to know that you are on this side of the world.
Yeah, and
Now,
I think there's a lot of similarities. It's really interesting to see that Indonesia and Colombia has a lot of things in common. For example, in Indonesia, professionals and students find it hard to speak English. They
mhm,
really have the fear of making mistakes, and in Indonesia we say lose face. So they feel that if they are making mistakes in grammar or in speaking, they feel like that's not okay. So they don't speak. In
yeah,
Colombia, we have the same challenge, and it's really interesting to see that hey, that's something that hold them back. Making mistakes, or for example, giving feedback, is in both continents. It's not something that they like to do or really familiar with. And I think that's also part of how they grew up in their families and how they interact with each other. Although it's a really family oriented, I think it's not always explicit in what they really think about you or what they think that should be improved or anything like that.
yeah. They are like more shy, we could say. Yeah. Yes, I've worked with people from Colombia, and again, I think they are even shyer. We could say more shy than here in Argentina, uh, especially in the capital city here. Just to give a contrast, if people tend to give, it's more like frontal. They go up in front, and sometimes you have conflict, but at least you know there's something going on, and say, and I think that's interesting. And I have worked with people from Colombia. They are super, just like in Indonesia, super calm and respectful. Maybe too much for us Argentinians. I don't know. Uh, so yeah, yes, those are the similarities.
But also, I think that it's really the power distance is quite big.
Mm,
So if you have a
yes,
position here in Colombia in a company or in a university, then it's really powerful, and
mm,
that's how they roll, whether they like it or not. I think it's
mm,
something that is part of their DNA. In Indonesia was the same. I still remember that at a certain point we said, okay, if there's an HR manager that wants to have an agile training or a scrum training, we will not start if there's no board member signing off and joining the dance, because it doesn't make sense if we change something on team level while the board of directors is still asking for reports and kind of KPI updates or whatever.
mm,
So I think that's a really interesting dynamic that you can use for as a benefit and say, okay, if we connect with the board members and they agree on this transformation, okay, we go. But if they're not on board, we don't start. Because the
yeah.
level below, we can start changing a lot of things, but if their upper level is still doing the old things, then it doesn't make sense. As soon as we leave, they have to go back to the old way of working.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And in Colombia, it's the same.
Yeah. Yes. And from the perspective, you are now working at a university, right? And you are working with the future managers. We could say, how do you see this? The new managers or the managers of the future. How do you handle that with the new technologies coming in and everything?
I think it's interesting. More than in Indonesia, for example, there is a difference in private and public education. I think Indonesia has the same, but I I feel like here the privileged people that have economical um, means to pay, for example, for our university, because it's a lot of money. You can go to Europe for the same price
Wow.
as tuition fee. So I think the group that we serve is a different group than that I was used to. So they're
Mm,
more wealthy, they're well off. And if you ask them, for example, how would you lead a team, they still believe that command and control is the only way. And that's really interesting. I said, if you graduate, do you want to have someone that tells you what to do? Are you serious? You do a bachelor or a master and you still want to have someone that is managing you? And then
mm,
over time they think, yeah, maybe I don't want to have that. But initially they still think that's normal.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's a really interesting thought. They some of them they state honesty. They say it will not work, Ranko, if we don't tell people what to do. If I start a business, I will micromanage them because it's needed. If we don't do that, there's nothing getting done. And I think in a culture like in Latin America, and it's quite similar to Indonesia, they are so used to have someone that tells them what to do, and if they're done, they go back to their boss and say, "Okay, what is the next thing?" Or the boss makes sure that the pipeline is more than full.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's an interesting context, and it's I think also hard to change the way they work. I'm
Mm,
still, for example, I'm still surprised by the interaction with people in meetings. For example, they um, in outside of the meeting, they're quite informal with people. They say hello with the little words like Sandrita or whatever. Really informal, but in the meeting, because he's our dean, they say dean. It's like what is going on here? Because in the Netherlands, we don't have this difference.
Yeah.
We eat with the CFO or the CEO on the one table. We don't have this kind of the way that we address people in business.
Mm.
Especially if we know each other for a long time. If it's new, we're quite formal at the beginning, but then we wait until the other party said, okay, you can call me by my name, or you don't have to address me like this. But here in Asia, but I think also in Indonesia, it's really interesting the dynamics, how they informal and informal address each other.
Yeah. And how do you see it presents like a challenge for you because maybe you want to somehow influence them or your students in order to be more open, or you think it's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
difficult for the culture to be changed?
I think it needs time, but I think
Mm.
education, the education platform is a good starting point for them to learn that hey, there's a different way of interacting with people, leading people. And for
Mm.
example, I'm doing now the leadership and sustainability course for students, and I use a simulator.
Mhm.
And I said this is harder than Matafin or calculus or any, because most of them they're not really fond of numbers. There's not only a small number of students that love to work with numbers, apparently, here in our business school. So I
Mhm.
said it's harder than those subjects because you have to deal with people. It's not the logic that you can apply or you can practice a certain equation and then you know how to solve it.
Yeah.
It's with people. Today it works, maybe tomorrow not. And that's a really hard thing for them to understand that, hey, and you see the same behavior that you see in with the professionals and with the adults here as well, that they say, oh, I'm done with my task. So in the simulation they have to run a business, and
Mhm.
they say, hey, it doesn't work, Ronco, because the students they don't respond. But the students say, yeah, but I do my job, I have my responsibility, I do my job, and that's it. There's no
Mhm.
discussion, it's just check the box and that's it. And it's like, wow, that's an interesting mechanism that they are getting from upbringing or from the culture that they bring to the table and say, okay, I just did my job. I said, but doing your job is not running a company. And you cannot
Mhm.
run a company through WhatsApp. That's I don't know any company that is only by chat. Yeah, we do this. Okay. I think there need to be a healthy conflict. There need to be a safe place that you can have a debate about the decisions that need to make as a group. And if you don't have them, how can you be a high performing team? That doesn't work.
Mm. Yes, in general, in Latin America, we tend to have like a leader that takes or a manager that takes of all the tough decisions, and you just do what you're told to. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's different.
yeah. Or we tell Carolina what to do. I said, but that's not teamwork. That doesn't work. And you need to have. And I think it's interesting that some of them they still want to be a manager, and I believe we don't need managers anymore. People that
Yeah.
just focusing on KPIs or results alone, and they
Mhm.
don't really join the workforce. I think it's a little bit a role that is obsolete, if you ask me. I think we don't need anybody in an even in a manufacturing that tells you
Mm.
what to do. I think it's a little bit outdated.
Yeah.
And if I tell my students this, they look at me. Serious? Yes. I think of course you need to be really good at your job, but still you need,
Yeah.
if you are a director for operations or for finance or for human resource, you still need to know the whole picture. What is the impact of your decision, for example, to change the compensation and benefits? What does that
Mhm.
mean for the P&L and etc. You cannot just be a human resource director and then say, I don't care about how they make the business, how the sales does, how the operation. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think you need to have someone that is really good in execution, but also have the big picture and the vision for the company.
Yes. I think it's good that you're in charge now telling this to your students because I think we need here in Latin America to maybe start changing a little bit more this attitude toward business and teamwork. And it's something that we are not told almost anywhere, even at school. You are still, for example, if you are the best student, you are like in a higher status than the rest. We don't learn how to work as a team, actually, here in Latin America in general, of course.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing sports. Sports is like a good metaphor, football here in this part of the world, to really understand how to work as a team. But at school and at work, we are not used to that.
No, no, and it's. I think it's an opportunity for them to. I think another opportunity and limitation is also that I think in general speaking in Colombia a lot of people they don't speak English or
Yes.
or even do research in English.
Mhm.
And I understand where they're coming from, but I think it's an opportunity to share more about what's happening on this part of the world, but also to connect more internationally.
Yeah, yeah, I think, and actually, I was the other day I did some kind of conversation in the channel, so for others, if they want to see that if you have another language besides your native one, you can start thinking in a different way too. So I think it's like having a real second brain, or not like just a tool, because you can understand things in a different perspective. And especially English is super important for us in Latin America because, as you say, you can connect with people from Europe, from the US, and have all the new things that are coming from there because we are like 20 years sometimes outdated. And that is a good way to really understand. And it's good that you are also delivering the classes in English. So I
Yeah,
hope
it's
they can really learn about that. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a blessing in the sky because this university have one of the requirements for the students after the first semester that they have to take 40%, I think, in English. So I think that this is one of the few universities in Colombia that has this rule. Because if I ask my other professors in other universities, they hardly have anyone that want to teach in English because they don't feel comfortable to share in English. And I don't think they have this rule. But I think it's really helpful because
Yes.
I said, okay, this is not an English class. We have an English department that support the students if they need any help. I have students that doesn't speak any word English, so I said, okay, it's okay that you can join this course, but you need to use, for example, Google Translate to make sure that you don't miss anything and have a better understanding of what I'm saying. But I think it's really fun for me to see those who come into class in the first couple of weeks that doesn't speak any word, and then over time they get more confident to speak and to present something in English. I think that's for me really cool to see that their development and their pride that they say, hey, I can say a few things in English, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
To create this safe space that they can, develop themselves in another language.
Mhm. And especially if they are going to be managers and at a certain, we could say, level of the organization, they will be inserted into, and they need to have this wider perspective, not only of Colombia, but also of the world. And that,
Yeah, so
yeah.
for example, going back to the course that I give, leadership and sustainability, we use a business simulator. So they have to start a business, and every decision round, there's 6 decision rounds that I spread out of the 17 weeks that we have a semester. I tell them, okay, you need to explain to me what are the decisions and based on what facts. Because whether you like it or not, if you are in a leadership position, you have to explain to the board of directors or to your shareholders why did you decide to do this or that, and what are the data that you use. And I said, this is just an exercise for you to make sure that you can express yourself and articulate yourself in a different language and a different way. Not only just do something and say, okay, that's it. So
Yes.
that's another part that we do as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. And how are your students responding to this? Are they on board, or there are some detractors, we could say, because this is also about like change management, right? For you, it's like also helping them during their personal change in this
Yeah.
new ideas.
Yeah. So after the first semester, in the first semester, we used a lot of case studies and readings. And I said, okay, how can you learn leadership just from paper? And I remember when I started in Equipa, and after a year when they asked me to be the operational director, I said, look, that was for me, although I had an MBA, the time that I learned to be a leader and have the conversation with clients, with the team members. And that was really where I developed my leadership skills. It was not during my MBA or during reading books. I think we can read a lot of books. That doesn't mean that you become a better leader. You can get inspired, but you need to apply it. So that's why I choose in the following semester to use a business simulator to have a case study that they are involved and they see the consequence of their teamwork and the decisions that they make. And also, I think leadership, but also sustainability is really abstract for them. It's something that is nice in books. It's most for them. They say, "Oh, it's an easy subject. It's not like calculo or matafin that's really hard." But I think they underestimate what leadership is because they never experienced something like that. And I keep telling them, it's not about your scores. It's about the process that we're going through, and hopefully this experiment and this experiential learning will help you to find your leadership track and to develop your skills in leadership. So giving feedback and taking the leadership role in your team is an opportunity in this class. So that is, so I get feedback that they find it really hard and that the scores are really low and it's all too complex. But I think that's good because then they have at least some experience. Because I think if they start tomorrow in the business world, they will face the same. I tell them that the challenges that you have working with people, they are not different in the business world. You cannot choose your team. So I make the teams, for example, and they hate me for that. But I said, in the business world, if you apply, you cannot say, okay, I want to work with him and not with him. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
So even if you start your own business, you have clients or maybe government people that you don't like to work with, but you have to work with them. So you cannot always say, yeah, but I select my group of friends and we start a business. Yeah, still you have clients that you don't maybe like to work with, and you have to deal with that.
Yes, and also have sometimes when you have friends, I have that experience too. I say, okay, I feel great with my friends, but maybe they're not the right ones for the job we want to do, right?
Right.
So yeah, this happens, and I remember, and I think maybe for your students, I think they are lucky because they are at a private school, a private university where they can learn a lot of things. That, for example, in my case, I had to learn just by being thrown at the position and say, okay, now you have to lead this team. And I have no idea, and I did everything wrong from the start. Now, at least they have the possibility to play with some simulation and also with ideas with you and learn from you too. And I think that is great. But yes, it's a great opportunity for them to learn.
Yeah, and even though it's like my kids, they not always appreciate or see directly what is the benefit of what we put them through. But I think it's it's a different way of learning, and especially the teamwork is hard for them. That's really tough. They say, "Oh, people don't work, they don't respond." Yeah, okay. So how do you go about it? So I give them the first and the second quarter the opportunity to talk to me. If they say, okay, we did everything, we start up the class, for example, with the team charter to set up the team rules. And then I say, okay, if it doesn't work, go back to your team rules and see how you can ask, hey, Carolina, how can we help you? Because we don't see you in the meetings and you don't show up on time or you don't deliver the work. How can we help you? I said, start with a positive note to help people to improve. And if that doesn't work, we can have the conversation.
Yes, yes, I think conflict, the same as Indonesia, it's kind of hard
Yeah.
to go with.
Yeah. I think also talking about it. It's sometimes for me as a lecturer easier to do the interventions. Okay, get together and say, okay, what do you think about this? Okay, do your part of the story, and then Okay, it's not that bad. Yeah, we can work it out.
Mhm.
And it's more like they don't talk. They only use the chat, for example, and they don't sit down for a coffee. And of course, I tell them you cannot. I don't expect you to be friends, but I want you to build a relationship for work. So it's not about that you do something wrong, but it's more like it's about the content or the decisions you make about a certain subject that can be different or it can be challenged. But it's not about you. But they think everything is about them. That's the interesting thing.
Yes, yes. And maybe do you think you mentioned that they only chat and they don't talk in person. Do you think that's something that maybe after the pandemic, I think this has been more into place now, or do you think that's part of the culture? Maybe because they
Yeah,
are new generation.
I think it's maybe part of their experience in COVID during the pandemic. But also I think it's generational because they
Mm,
do a lot of things through chat and that's the only thing they have. That's what they think. And
yeah.
I sometimes they come to me and say, "Oh, um, this person doesn't work really well." I said, "Did you tell him?" Did we tell him? Yes. Why do you tell me? I said, "I cannot help you." So you first should talk to him and ask, "Okay, what is going on your side?" Most of the time we don't know, and but sometimes I think students are really harsh. So I had a
Mm,
student that had some private issues in the family, and I'm not sure how she told her team about it, but her team was like, "Yeah, she's not responsive, la la la." And I said, "Did she tell you about her situation?"
mm.
Yeah, but it's my grade.
Yes, yes.
So I think I was writing this morning about the system of grading, and my students gave me feedback that they say, okay, our grades are too low, and I understand the system that we are part of, and I tell them you need to look at the process, not at the score and the grade only. I think that's just a way that we part of the system,
Mm,
and I know people that did all kind of tests in English, but that they doesn't speak any word of English. So I think a grade and number doesn't say anything to me, but that's
mhm,
more personally.
yeah.
And I said, just embrace the process. It's going to be fine. If you need a few points for your backup, for your scholarship or whatever, I'm here. I don't care about grades. It's more the process that we go through. And if you show up every session, if you do all the things that is needed to make your team work, don't worry. Those who, for example, I split the grading in two parts. So one part is individual and one part is group work. So I said if you leading yourself well and set the right priorities and you do your individual task, you you're okay. You will pass this. I don't see you next semester. But if you most of them they cannot even lead themselves. So they don't do the individual task, so therefore they lose this subject. So I think
Yeah.
grading is a really interesting beast, if you ask me. I think it's
Mhm.
something that I hope in the future that we can change it because I think a grade in itself, a number or a grading list or a GPA, what does it say about the person itself?
Yes, and as I was saying, here is I remember when I was at school and at university, grading was something like even my parents say, "Why you have a 9 instead of a 10?" For example, sometimes 10 is like you have to be a 10, and yeah, here it's like kind of important apparently. So I think you're disrupting that. You're
No, no,
you're
Indonesia had the
confusing
same
your
issue.
your students.
Yeah, poor student. No, no, but Indonesia was the same.
But
And
I
I
understand.
think I spoke to someone from Singapore when I visited Singapore, and
Yeah.
they told me it's really hard to find qualified people. And I said, why? Because you have the best education system. And he said the
Mhm.
downside of this education system that focused on memorization is that you cannot just put them at random any task because it's not by the
Mhm.
book,
Yeah.
and they really don't know where to start. So I think it's really interesting what we try to accomplish here, and especially in a day and age of AI. If we take that in account, I tell my students, memorization or having knowledge is not number one anymore. It's more like we need to develop the skill to articulate ourselves, to be critical and say, hey, is this correct or is this incorrect? And how can we use it for today's challenges?
Yes, I use the metaphor. I mean, a definition or a word from the arts, which is curation. We need to be now curators because we need to discern what is the right thing to do, what is not the right thing, what is the thing that we have alternatives and what to use right now, and that kind of thing. I think that's where we as humans can, I don't know if beat the AI, but work with the AI as a tool. And especially in leadership, I don't think you can memorize anything because
No,
when you
but I
are
think
presented with daily problems and they are always different, and there's no way you can memorize things because you
no,
have to think.
yeah, and it's also about the human interaction, and I think that is something that we maybe lost a little bit focus on, in also in the academic place, that we said, okay, focusing on the soft sides, for example, how to communicate with people, how to give them feedback, how to motivate people, is something that up until today AI cannot play a significant role in. It can give you ideas, but you still have to execute. It can help you to reduce time and increase productivity in terms of creating a PowerPoint or any kind of analysis, but still you have to present it. You have to discuss it. You need to own the information. If you don't, then people will ask you all kind of questions that I have no idea. So I think that those are the skills that we still, I think, need to focus on in this time of age with AI and disruptive technology, that we focus more on the soft skills, how to network, how to build a relationship, how to hold a conversation, how to be more analytical, how can we, like you said, create data and be more like a fact checker. I think for a couple of years ago we had fact checkers, right? I don't know where they've gone, but I think we need them because they just copy paste from AI. The other thing that I saw, and I think I'm not really afraid of AI. I hear some educators, they are really afraid of it. They say, oh, they will cheat and they will copy paste. But garbage in is garbage out. If they don't know the subject, how can they ask the right questions to a robot to help them to come up with new ideas? They can't. So, for example, yesterday we have a challenge with a food producer here in Colombia, and their sales of one of the brands is declining. So, in the first part of the semester, we did a lot of research on what is the problem and etc. And this week we are in the ideation. So I said, okay, those are the items. And I said, you can use any kind of AI to come up with new ideas, but you need to give the robot some context, and they don't know how to give context, how to introduce or to prompt a question that helps them to get some nice ideas. I said, it's not just asking or say, okay, this is the problem and this is the company and can you give me some ideas? No, you need to give the robot, give the AI some context about what you know about the situation, what is your interpretation of the root causes and etc. If you don't, you get just a superficial answer that the company that we work for can do the same.
Yeah. And also when you receive, even when you have a full answer, you have entered all the context and everything, sometimes you also have to think and really analyze if that is going to work for your current context, because the AI will give you an answer, but is that the right one for you? You have to have those also the time, I think, to sit down and analyze things. That's something that I guess we are lacking today because we are so trying to be so productive, but in the bad way, I would say, not having the real time to be productive and sitting and analyzing and thinking, being critical.
critical about the data that it's producing, and also, okay, like you said, is it feasible? Is it viable for the company to do this kind of things, or is it far too theoretical? And how can you? I think it's really. I told them, so I did, for example, the Crazy Eight after they did the AI exercise. So they had the A4 and 8 blocks, and said, okay, 1 minute, and you draw, only draw some new ideas that you have. And I really believe that the ideas that they come up with are more valuable than the initial ideas from AI, because the AI is just straightforward what is said before. But making these combinations, I think it's really interesting to see the students using technology to. I tell them you can easily now in 5 minutes create a PowerPoint. So don't waste your time on that. It's waste your time and spend your time on practicing and owning the story. And is this the story that you want to tell? The art is not anymore to create something, but it's more like, okay, how do we communicate it to other people?
Yeah, totally. Yes. And I also read a news the other day that there are even courses on how to respond your cell phone, because now the new generations, I don't know if this applies to your students, but new generations are afraid of talking on the phone because they are so used to sending voice messages, so it's just one way, and not having this come and go like we are here right now, like giving feedback, listening, having the time to listen, understand, and then give the feedback. And that really struck me the other day when I heard that, and saying, why do we need this kind of courses? But apparently we do. So
yeah, that's interesting. I see a lot of people in Colombia, they just speak into their phone and voice message. And I was not really in Indonesia. We didn't have that many people doing voice messages, not through the WhatsApp or Telegram or something. So for me, it was like, wow, they don't like to talk to you anymore. They just do a monologue, and then really long ones. And like,
yes,
wow, this is interesting. This is a really interesting way of communication.
Yes,
But I think, yeah.
I had a friend that she once sent me like a 15-minute voice message, and she was cooking at the time, and she was like, oh, I have to put this and that, and what was I saying? And I said, I don't want to listen to any more voice messages that are, I don't know, like 2 minutes, longer than 2 minutes. I won't listen because I want you to write the thing that you need from me, and not. Yes, because I also think that's my personal opinion. I think that's a this lacking of respect for other people's time, right? You're not value other people's time. That's my idea. I don't know. Maybe I'm too strict. I don't.
No, but I think it's an interesting. For me, coming to Colombia, not speaking the language, having voice messages are horrible, horrible, because I don't know your language. How can I make anything out of this? And also going on the phone. That's a challenge. Calling for a doctor or anything, or yeah. So yeah. So for me, it was really a new phenomenon that I was like, wow, this is interesting that they like to speak. So I think Colombians love to talk. So if you give them the mic, or if you give them they're not really to the point. For example, we had a European accreditation last year, and they asked me, can you help the professors to prepare, because their English is a second language and they're not really confident with this. So I said, yes. So I gave them in general some feedback, mainly be more to the point, because European, their time is money thinking, right? They want to hear just A, B, C, D, and that's it. And if they want to know more, they will ask you. And that's really hard for Colombians to, okay, let's be to the point.
Yeah, I think I can generalize it to Latin America, and that is something I had to learn, for example, because I've never been that much of a talker, but I also had to learn how to be concise and that kind of thing. And yes, you go to the meetings, and that is why they extend. People go off topic. They talk about the weather, football, and I don't know, many things. So you have to put an agenda. and those kind of things. I think they are really important. All time management is really
Yeah.
important for
Yeah. So
to understand. Mm.
one of my friends told me he's from the UK, and he told me, Ronco, there's so much waste of time in chit chatting.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Yeah, people love to drink coffee, chit chat, and they make long days, but they
Mm-hmm.
can reduce that time if they stop. I think it's also part of the culture.
Yeah.
It's like building this relationship. Like in Indonesia, they love food, they love to hang out and have this chit chat, and that's where they bond. That's where they
Mm-hmm.
connect with people or not, right?
Yeah.
If you are only transactional, it's really hard for, I think, Asian and for Latin American people to connect, because why should I connect to you? Why should I trust you? I don't know anything about you.
Yes.
So I think that there are, I'm not sure what is better. The
Yeah, it's
European
different.
way of just being really, because to be honest, I think for me it was people for me it was a big change to go from Europe to Asia, for example, and the dimension of time.
Mm-hmm.
But hearing people from Asia or Latin American talking about the fact that they said, "Oh, time, the dimension of time," and that people even can come late for meetings on Zoom or whatever meeting, they're
Yeah.
always late.
Mm.
And I said, but there is a beauty about the fact that time is not really constrained by, okay, we have a 30-minute meeting, so after 30 minutes they stop talking and it's okay, the meeting should non-verbal done, right?
Yeah.
There is a beauty in everything. If you
Mm-hmm.
ask me, I think it's not that Europe or the US has the best way to communicate and say, okay, we need to be really outcome focused, really transactional, and no.
Mm. Yes. Yes, I think we should get to a balance. Well, that's super utopical, I think, because it's difficult to get to a real balance when you have this like more emotional connection and part with people and also or social, and you have also the transaction. Yeah, it's really difficult to achieve that, and
Yeah, if you're from
it's an
different
ideal.
continents. Yeah, so I understand the people that say, oh, I long for maybe the European way of working that is more to the point, it's more clear. And for me, there's a charm. For me, the chaos, the chaotic meetings that we have that always go longer than we expected, and there's not really a structure. I think there's a charm.
Yes, I
I think
actually,
we take out the charm. What is left?
yes, and I actually think even though at first it was a shock for me, because here Argentina is kind of a chaos, but Indonesia was total chaos. And I say, okay, here I feel in my country, I feel like this the right amount of chaos. But I do miss sometimes Indonesia because it was more relaxed and people were all the time relaxing and more friendly and that kind of thing. So yeah,
Oh, that's
that's a charm.
interesting. Yeah. Ah, okay.
Hmm.
I think maybe Indonesia was compared to Colombia, maybe in, for example, the infrastructure back then a
Hmm.
little bit less developed. For example, we have here in Colombia we have bike roads. Now in Indonesia you cannot find them.
Yeah.
No, not that people don't bike, but there's no bike lane made for bikers to go to work, for example.
Hmm.
Here we have it, and it's like, wow, that's interesting. Although there's a chaos, and I think if you go into getting a visa or other stuff, it takes a lot of time and it's a lot of patience that you need to practice there. But yeah,
Yeah. So you don't miss machete. Machete are not the same as in Colombia. Machete is
I bike
traffic
every day
jam.
to my, yeah, I think it's interesting because when we came here, people were complaining because, for example, my wife is teaching in the north of the city,
Mhm,
and her colleagues is teaching in a German school, and they always complain about the traffic.
mhm.
And I said, but you don't know what the traffic is, really, because here it's still moving, and maybe it takes you a little bit time, and maybe if there's really something happening, it takes you much longer than expected. But it's
Yeah.
not like in Jakarta,
No,
where
not
you
at all.
go maybe 5 kilometers and it takes you 2 hours to
Yes.
go from A to B in the city.
Yes.
So it's just your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I remember when I was in Mexico City before going to Jakarta, I say I will never again complain about the traffic in Argentina here in Buenos Aires, because in Mexico it's similar to Jakarta, but I
Right.
think Jakarta is worse. Machete is worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a matter of perspective, and when you have been to some places where traffic is real complicated, then you can realize that in your place it's not that bad.
No, it's it's relative, and it's okay. So as long as it's moving, I think in major cities, in big cities in the Netherlands, we have also during peak hours traffic jams. So it's not really depending how developed a country is or how good the infrastructure is.
Hmm.
There's certain times that people leave and come to work.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting.
So I gather from what you were saying about the charm of Asia and Latin America, you may not want, or you may not go back to Europe for work, or you never know.
You never know. That we planned for a year in advance, but to be honest, it's not something that I put on my wish list to go back to the Netherlands to work there.
Mm.
No, I think the charm of a country like Colombia or in Indonesia where we live, it is that there's so much things to work on together.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that we have all the knowledge, but together there's so much work to do. Like you said, we are a little bit behind with other countries like Europe or US. So there's so much opportunity to work on and see if you can find any improvements or
Yes.
better ways of working in the context. I think that's also another thing, that there's a lot of literature about Europe or US in
Mhm.
management or in leadership or in strategy. And but it doesn't always, it most of the time it's not contextualized for Colombian or Asian context.
Mhm.
And that, I think, something that's the challenge that we have. We have new tools, new frameworks, and how can we make it work in countries like Colombia? And with the cultural difference, with the different infrastructure and way that we communicate with people.
Yes. Yes, I also think that in these countries that we are more chaotic, we have so much more to do than maybe in Europe or more organized and structured countries. So yeah, I think that's also interesting because you always are presented daily with something new and something to
Yeah,
solve,
it's never
something
like
to
this. Yeah,
a pure experiment, pure improvisation. I really
yeah,
like that.
and I think that develop a skill. If I look, for example, in Colombia, the resilience that people have, although the history with guerrilla and the drugs and all the unrest that the country had, and I think it's something I realize it's not only Colombia, but it's, I think, complete Latin America that always was in tension about politics or economical downturns. Anything that happens is
Hmm.
quite major, and that people still smile and thrive in
Yes.
this kind of life. It's really interesting, and I think that developed a skill that we're not really used to have in Europe. I think looking at Europe, they became really lazy in a way, because we say, oh, how can we work less and go to a 40-hour work week? Well, in Colombia, I think the work week officially is 45 hours, which is
Hmm.
really interesting. But also, everything is a given. They, for example, during the pandemic, they were talking about, hey, why I cannot go on holiday or cannot celebrate my birthday. And it's like, is that your major issue in your life?
Hmm.
Look at here in Latin America, but also we were in Indonesia, the informal economy is suffering because
Yeah.
those workers, they cannot go anywhere. They're locked
Hmm.
up, and if they cannot go anywhere to work, they don't have any income.
Hmm.
And realizing that living in Europe, they have everything, and they complain about things that are more nice to have than that is really essential of life. Versus living in Indonesia, or also knowing that here in Colombia, 70-80% is informal economy. And that's not bad, but that's the reality. So you deal with, for example, a pandemic differently than in Europe.
Yes. Yes, totally. I remember I had a friend from Indonesia that he told me why, but he's actually from Europe. And he said, why are you still in Argentina with all the problems that you have? I also have that from my friends in Europe. They say, why are you still in Argentina with all the problems that you have? You don't have money, you don't have shop, you don't have. But I think there's, I don't know, there's some beauty or some charm, as you said, that you have to be thinking all the time on how to survive or how to do new things that keeps you alive also.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of a beauty if we see it from the positive way. Of course, we have stress and that kind of thing, but it's just life, right? It's life. It's the way life presents, and you have to deal with it. And I think you grow up in the process too. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it's a really interesting thing that I think the future is in Latin and Asia, because the people, they know what it is to have challenges day to day. It's not something new to them. Although if we look and compare them with Europe or US, we feel like, okay, they are a little bit behind in ways of working or technology or healthcare, whatever it is. But I don't think that's really a disadvantage. I think they know how to thrive in hard situations.
Yeah.
And with limited resources, just to get things done is amazing.
We have to be
So
creative.
that's the skill that they in Asia that I see, that people that they survive.
Yes. Yes, that's true. Yes, creativity is everywhere. Yes, I found
Yeah.
that
So
also
for example, during the pandemic, for example, I I had students that have no access to internet, and it's like, this is 2023, 2024. What is happening in your life? No, we don't have money to pay internet. It was like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
And that for us, like, if you see it as a basic needs, like, you cannot imagine that you don't have access to internet. But there were families there during the pandemic that didn't have the resources to pay for a subscription on internet.
Yes.
And that really gives you a reality check that there's so much to do in this kind of countries and circumstances, that we feel like, okay, there are parts that are wealthier, but are they better off? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they may have other challenges that we don't have. For example, I don't know, I've heard that mostly in Europe people are stressed and depressed, that kind of thing. Maybe it's the other side, of the opposite side of having
Of
or
having
not having
wealth.
money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think.
Other challenges.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. So, okay. And you told me that you are working with sustainability too. What
Yes.
what
So
are the
this course is leadership and sustainability.
and what are the plans, for example, for sustainability now that, for example, AI is kind of strange because it takes so much energy, but now it's the new tool that it comes to us. And how does it sit with sustainability that I hear everyone, people is trying to be more sustainable and that kind of thing, but on the other hand, we have these tools that consume too much things.
Yeah.
Is there some thing that you discuss with your students or?
No, I realized that. So I saw some people posting, for example, about the new AI model from ChatGPT that has used so many resources to create the pictures, and it's a really interesting challenge. I think it's, in general, I think sustainability start with us. And for example, consuming clothes and food and other stuff, it if we're not really conscious about it, we can talk about
Yeah.
sustainability in theory, but we don't practice it. And I tell them, I think if you are not really sustainable yourself or make this kind of decisions on how to, for example, here in Colombia, in Bogota, we have an issue with water.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
since we're living here now 2 years, since last year, they have now some days on the month that we have no water supplied because they need to save water. But I think it's really interesting to see if we're not conscious on how we use water and how we can save water, then how can we talk about sustainability? And I think using AI and for example knowing that ChatGPT is using so much resources in terms of data and energy to create those visuals.
Yeah.
If we don't stop using them, then how can we say that we are really sustainable?
Mm.
So I think it's a really interesting time that we live in. That that we have here the fast fashion chains in Colombia as well, and I tell my students, do you buy them? Yeah, of course, because we want to have every week a new shirt, because we want to be trendy and fashionable. But I said, okay, if you know the numbers, we can close the whole world with all the extra clothes that we are generating,
Yeah.
that are still piling up somewhere in the world.
Mm.
And realizing that we are the key to change this cycle. If we stop consuming that much of clothes, and maybe we go to thrift stores instead of going to H&M or whatever chain,
Mm-hmm.
that will change the whole dynamic. It's not like telling them, okay, we need to change and you have to start creating less clothes. No, as long as we buy, they will create. If
Mm-hmm.
we stop buying, then there's a thinking, okay, how can we create maybe something more sustainable?
Yeah, I think that's something funny, right? And well, funny is just a word to put it, but yeah, I think it's also because I was talking with a friend about this the other day, because we have so many layers that we don't see. For example, we just go to the store and just buy a clothes, but we don't know what's behind the production of that thing. The same with AI, the same with many things. We just
Yeah.
think, oh, okay, I go and I put a plug into the wall and I have electricity and that's it. And if you ask, actually, I have asked some people, that friends of my niece who are like 20 years old or something like that, and they don't really know how electricity, for example, is produced. They
No.
just are on their phone and they don't know all the layers that are consuming electricity, consuming water and fuel. And so I think that's how we lose our perspective, we could say, as a
Yes,
society, right? And we don't
but
fully
the
understand
interesting thing,
things.
of course, if we talk, for example, about fast fashion, that's quite close to students' life, right? And
Mhm.
if you say, okay, would you consider to go to a thrift store, which is not really popular in Colombia? We have some thrift
Mhm.
stores and places, but you need to know them. And they said, I don't want to wear something maybe people die in. It's like, it's cultural, right? They think that
Yes.
if they don't know the history about the clothes, they
Mhm.
would not wear it. Maybe they wear it from a good friend and they buy it from a good friend, but that's the limit. But
Mhm.
buying from a stranger in a thrift store and not knowing who wore it before, that's really something that is no, 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 no.
Yeah. But
Okay,
at the
that's
same time, you say, okay, the clothes are new, but many times they come from sweatshops or where people is being sometimes even slaved to build these uh, brands and that kind of thing,
yeah,
right? But we just don't see it, so it doesn't happen. It's like,
yeah. And I think especially from maybe from European perspective.
mm,
So, for example, in Indonesia, we lived in the town Salatiga, and we had one of the big shoe factories from, I think, Converse and Nike. So they,
mhm,
they employed 1,000, 2,000 people working there.
yeah,
And of course, they have to follow the regulations, and they are different than from Europe. But that doesn't mean it's bad. And like I think it's, and of course they get a fraction of a salary than people in Europe get, but it doesn't mean it's really bad. So it's also again a point of perspective that okay, people earn less money and they're enslaved. No, people choose to work there. They can choose to work somewhere else. Like Amazon is saying, okay, we don't pay people really good salaries, but they choose to work here. They can also work somewhere else. That's up to them. And I think that's similar in countries like Indonesia. People can choose to work there, and if there's nobody, then maybe they will move the plant to Cambodia or other places where people maybe are willing to work. But apparently, they create something that is valuable for the community to work there and have income in one way or the other instead of doing another job.
Yes. No, I was talking about some cases here in Argentina. It was a long time ago, but they were really slaves. They were people enslaved for creating these clothes and that kind of thing. There were some brands here that had this kind of problem. Yeah, it was really a scandal here in Argentina.
Yeah. So for example, one of my friends has a factory in shoes, and I came there, and it's a family business. And I was amazed about the condition that people were gluing the shoes and working. I was like, wow, that's not really healthy. I think if you every day work with this glue and gluing the soles of the shoes, I think that's not really without any
protection
or any air conditioner. No, I think it's not really healthy. But for them, it's just a day-to-day practice.
Yeah.
And they know it's maybe not the best situation, but as a small company, do you have the investment to make a whole system, and is it worth your business? I think in some cases they said no, it's not worth. In Europe, we force people to do that, businesses, because they have to be compliant with the regulation. I was in a conference with it was about informal economy, and I think in Colombia, Indonesia, we find people that sell drinks on the street without any license. And police just buy the coffee, the tinto on the street, or the empanadas or whatever, and there's nobody asking, hey, do you have a license? Do you follow the rules? No, there's nobody. And in Europe, you cannot think about that you can sell any kind of food just on the street every day without getting a fine if you don't have the license. So those are two complete different worlds.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I think, for example, the informal economy has a function in this kind of countries. If you lose your job and you really need money, you can still consider to sell empanadas or start your home factory, whatever you want to do. There's no way that people stop you and say, no, Carolina, you cannot sell this because you don't have the qualifications or the license. Oh.
Yeah. I also think that it's great that we have that in our countries.
It's really, right?
Because just for survival, especially when you have so much crisis or you are always in crisis like in Argentina, that informal economy helps the families to survive, and that.
Yeah. And I spoke to a professor that did research in Colombia about this informal economy, and he said, especially if there's a economical decline, people lose their jobs, they go into the informal economy for a while, and of course it has a function. It's different than in Europe, that you have a social system that you get maybe from the government 70% of your last salary or whatever is the percentage if you are laid off. We don't have that system, so there's another mechanism to survive.
Yeah.
And I think if I look at the Netherlands, for example, hearing that, for example, insurance on healthcare is getting more and more expensive. Elderly homes are closed because they are not able to subsidize that anymore. So the social system that everybody was like, wow, this is nice and everybody should have it, I think it's breaking down because it's not really sustainable through tax collection only to pay this kind of big systems for healthcare, pensions, and education. It's really costly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think a system having like an informal economy is not bad.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly helpful for us, for Latin America at least, and Indonesia also. So
Yeah,
that, yeah,
it's a big
it's
informal
helpful.
economy. And of course, I understand from European perspective. Yeah, but for example, in Colombia, we have a good healthcare and it's also accessible for people that doesn't have a formal job. They can still go and find a doctor or get some support.
Here too, yeah.
The only thing is pension. I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe we should go to the old system and say, okay, our kids pay and help us to survive when we don't have work. I think it's a good system that they had in Indonesia that and still have. I think in Colombia they still have the tradition that they should take care of the parents. It's really someone told me it's really strange or it's almost offensive that you put your parents in an elderly home.
Mm. Yes.
I don't know what about in Argentina, but I think it's
No,
interesting.
here in Argentina, it used to be like that when I was a child, but now it's no longer. You can go and put your parents into, yes, into an institution and they will take care of them. But we do have, at least so far, we have healthcare free for everyone if we need it. So that's a good thing. Also, education here is free, for free.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have
So
private
far,
school.
because we don't know what will happen, but yeah. Sorry?
But do you have the same like in Colombia, the split between a big difference between the private schools and the national schools?
Well, actually, here, national schools, public schools are much more like renowned, we could say. It's like they are like better off or considered better.
Okay.
In general, because what tends to happen, and I have a friend also here at university, at a private university. What happens here is that the private universities, for example, subjects and the class they take are like reduced, but in public school you have to study a lot, and it's kind of more difficult than private school.
Okay.
That is why, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if you graduate from for example, here in Colombia, I understand that people send their kids to a private school because the chance of a job is higher. So if you come from our university or another private university, it's more likely that you find a good job. So the parents are willing, no matter what, to invest a lot of money in the study of their kids.
Yeah, here in general we go to public school unless you come from I don't know, a wealthy family that can afford maybe private schools. But the difference is, or at least it was, I don't know, 20 years ago, it was more valued if you come from a public school than from a private one. I don't know right now, but I think it's still the same. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because in Europe we don't have this distinction between public and because everything is public and subsidized by the government. All only if you are from another country outside of Europe, then you pay a lot of money to enter university because then you are an international student. So we never. For me in Indonesia we had the same that the public and the private. It's still
Private
different,
is
but
better.
I think the gap. Yeah, I think the gap here in Colombia is bigger, in the sense that they say, okay, if you go to a public school, depend on which one. For example, the national university here is subsidized, and they have a really good name because they have many resources for research and stuff like that. But all the others, for example, it's less lower grade and it's less chance to have a good job.
That's interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will ask you now because I was told I had a friend that lives there in Colombia, like, I don't know, 20 or maybe 30 years ago. And he told me like you have not exactly like that, but you have like classes of people or you have like some kind of caste. I don't know, like you.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, they have the strato. Strato
Stratos.
1, 2, and 3. So I think one, two, if I understand it well, one and two are subsidized by six, five, and four. So I think one, two, and three are subsidized by six, five, and four. So you pay a little bit more for your utilities like electricity and water
Mm-hmm.
to subsidize those who are living in a lower strata.
Mm.
Yeah,
And that is
but
only in Bogota or everywhere else?
I don't know. I think it,
Ah,
and I also am still wondering how they find out what is a lower and what is a higher strato.
yeah.
Um,
Mm.
But they told me that, for example, we have some place that have majority of strata five and six, so the more wealthy people, but they have also houses that are flagged like strata two. So you can live in a like upper class neighborhood and still paying nothing for utilities.
Oh, I didn't
But they
know that.
told me also that it's interesting, for example, uh, in if you apply for a job and they know your address and they check it and they see that you are from a lower state, that they not even consider you to invite you for an interview.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's another similarity.
That's
I think,
strange. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think they quite racist in a way. So
Mm.
in that way, they discriminate people from a lower strata or from a, if you are have a dark skin color, for example, Afro American or from the Costa,
Mm.
it's interesting because the similar stuff that we see in Indonesia as well. If you have a dark skin or
Yeah.
it's
Mm.
harder to get a good job, which is
Mm.
to me like in Europe we not
Yeah,
even
it
think
doesn't
about
matter.
it to
Mm.
select people based on. Of course, there is always a prejudice or a bias about certain people, but I think it's not that strong as here. We had a person from, he was a project manager, and he said some of the clients that said, okay, we don't want to have this kind of people that work for us. And it's like, it's 2025. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But they still have preference or
Wow.
experiences. I don't know what is driving them, but I was like,
Mm.
wow, that is serious
Yeah.
stuff. That
Well,
is,
that in Argentina, no. Of course, again, as you said, as prejudice, I think there will always be as long as you are human. But at least from that point of view, no, you can
and
work.
in Argentina, you don't have the stratos.
No,
You
no,
don't
no,
have, ah,
no,
okay.
we don't.
So I think the intention is good from the government to have lower income
Hmm.
areas that get subsidized from higher income fields, but
Mm.
I think it's also abused for selection criteria or
Yeah.
something like that. I think
Mm.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think the intention is good, but the execution is a little bit
Yeah.
debatable.
Yeah. That
But
I
also, I
found
think
that super interesting. Mm.
also I think if you are a foreigner here,
Mm.
it's not as in Indonesia that they really look up to you, but I think they are a little bit more, like you said, they're really polite
Mhm.
and they're not really challenging your point of views. Really, that's it. That's something is like, oh, there's almost like in Indonesia. In Indonesia was different that they're really the extreme of opening the door for foreigners, and if you're white skinned, then you're the king of the road. But
Yeah.
here's a little bit less, but still, I feel like they
Mm.
have something like, oh, if you're from Europe or US, you must know better because we have something in our mind. We are less developed than you are. But
Here is the same in that regard. Yes. Yes.
there's
We
still
we
the
think that
paradigm that they are
Europeans
less.
are, yeah, are better and know better than us because in general, of course, there are people that say no, they are just like us, but in general, yes, we think
Yeah,
that
I think the
people.
people that doesn't have that really much is the people that study or work in Europe or in the US.
Hmm.
They have less of this paradigm, but people that never went outside for work or study, they struggle to meet foreigners or something or work with them. That's really interesting.
Mm. Yeah.
It's like, You know, the world is your kindergarten. It's your playground. So you just
Yeah.
connect, you use LinkedIn or whatever platform, and you talk to people around the world. What is the problem? And then again, the language is one, but also I think their paradigm of being less than other parts of the world is playing a part.
Yes. Yes. Here you can see that being less, especially in the not that much in the capital city, but in the rest of the country. You can see
Okay.
like sometimes you feel a little less, or even there's this like kind of it's not a war, but like this kind of prejudice against the people from the capital city.
Right.
Because here I'm living in the capital city here in Buenos Aires, and you have everything here. You have everything you need is at your hand. You can go and have everything you need. And in the provinces, maybe you don't have that possibility to get
Right.
things to. And I understand that. I come from the province, so yeah.
Right. Ah,
Hmm.
okay. Nice.
Yes. So, and is there a name that people give, for example, here to the people that live here in the capital city? They call porteños. And what's the name in Bogota? I don't know if they have something like that.
I don't know.
Ah,
I think I know that there's the people they for example from other cities and going to Bogota or work here. Um, People recognize their accent, of course, but also I think there's, like you said, there's a little bit like looking down. We are from the city, and you're from a smaller town or city. So, and also I think the interactions are faster. At least that's what they say compared to other cities.
yes,
For me, it's still like,
same
are
here.
you kidding me?
Yeah, the faster, but faster for Latin America. I think
Right.
we are more accelerated here in Argentina. From what I've seen, the rest of the country, I haven't been to Colombia yet, but for example, I can compare to Mexico and other parts. We are like more a little bit faster
Ah,
in
okay.
talking and doing things. We are always challenging others a little bit more, at least than the rest of Latin America.
Okay.
Yeah, that is why many times you can hear things from Argentina or Argentinos that is not that good because the tendency is that we are like too proud, they say,
Ah,
and that
okay.
kind of thing. Yeah.
No, and I think that working in education, I think that's also similar to Indonesia, that it goes really slow. It has a different pace with the business.
Mhm.
I invited in the last in this semester some business people to share with my students their work and their experiences. And after if they come, we have coffee, and then they say, "Oh, the work pressure is really high. We have to constantly be on top of things." And I said, I think that's something that we need to bridge, because people that only grew up in the academic, in research and teaching, and not used to speak the same language or having the same pace, it's really a different way of communicating.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think we need each other in academics. We need to bring the business people in and the people from the government to find solutions for the problems that we have today.
Yeah.
And but it's like it doesn't mix. It's like oil and water. I'm always amazed. Like, the business can
Yeah.
teach you so much about what is needed today for our students to know, to develop. And but yeah, it's hard for them to maintain a relationship or to connect with them. And so we have LinkedIn. Make sure you update your profile and reach out to people, invite them. How do you do that, Ranko? Yeah, just ask them. Know that you have, and yes, you can get it.
Yes.
And they love it. I think they told me, some of the presenters, they said, "Oh, Ranko, it's really scary." I said, "Scary? Yeah, I do normally this kind of presentations for board of directors or other managers, but for students, it's different. It's a different group. So
Mm.
they don't eat you. No, I know, but it's scary."
Yes. 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 I think also that we need to start to bond different worlds, business, academics, the art. I think it's time for, and I'm having a mate here. I think
Oh
it's
wow,
time
that's good.
for us
That's good.
to open up, I think, to other
Yeah,
communities, to understand other groups of people, not just. And I hear a lot about being like-minded, which is good, of course, but also you need to be open to other ideas because
yeah.
you will always learn something else from that. Yeah, I think that's.
Oh, but I think that a topic that is coming more into the academic is how relevant is our research,
Mhm.
how impactful for government or for the society or for business is the thing that we research and come up with. Because if it's not, why are we doing it? Are we just in a bubble with another group of researchers and we travel the world about a certain topic that we are really good at, and we said, okay, we need to research this aspect. Does it have any relevance? I don't know. I don't care because there's someone in the world to pay for it, and I think it's interesting. I go to another conference and share about it. It's like, okay, but if there's no outcome that is helpful for the society or for business or a positive impact for healthcare, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Just to satisfy our own needs. That's, I think, something that is coming more and more into the academic as well. And I think for business as well, we can run a business, but if we don't have a sustainable impact on the community or beyond that for society or for the world that we live in, the nature, the resources, I think people are still sensitive to that as well, to find companies that are more than only making money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that is something that is coming to Latin America. I don't know. I hope so.
One day. No,
Uh,
no, I think it's interesting.
hmm. We have a lot to do here. A lot to do. And that's the
Yeah,
good thing. Yeah.
yeah.
You will
There's a
never
lot of
get tired. Like in
no.
Indonesia too. It's a country in development. So there are
Yeah,
so many
yeah.
things you can do. Hmm.
And there's a lot of things that we can work on. Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see what
Yes.
the future brings.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I don't know if you want to say something else or want to, I don't know, maybe tell another story or anecdote from Colombia.
No, I think we had a nice conversation.
Yes.
What do you think?
Me too. Me too. I think we can leave it here and maybe some other time have another conversation.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. I liked it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here, Ranco. And I still can't pronounce your surname.
Oh, don't worry, don't worry. You're not the only
Ranco
one.
K. Ranco K.
Yeah, yeah. Don't worry, don't worry. No, I never. I think I hardly use my last name in my introductions because it's too long. And in Colombia, they have the. So I got my Colombian passport, and
Mhm.
they they have the system that they use your father's last name and then your mother's last name in your
Yes.
passport, and that's really long because my mother's last name is Steenbergen. Can you imagine? And then people look at me and then, oh, this is your ID, and what? This is your name? How does that work? Yeah.
The good thing is that your name is short, so everybody
Yeah,
can say Ranco. That's
yeah,
good.
that's good. That's good.
So it's so nice to see you again after a long time. We wanted to talk, and I wanted to know how you were doing in Indonesia and sorry in Colombia now. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate this conversation that we had. And
More than welcome.
mhm. And see
Wish you all
you.
the best and a lot of health.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Gracias.
Yes. Thank you very much and all the best for you and your students and all the work that we still have to do here in Latin America. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Okay. Ciao.
Ciao.
Stay tuned for Ulua's next episode.